Welcome back, and thank you so much. In case you're just joining us this morning, we are celebrating women on this International Women's Day, the year 2023. The theme this year is to digit all. And of course, just using innovation and technology to address gender equality in the entire globe. And we've talked in depth about some of the barriers that are hindering women from accessing technology and even being part and parcel of that very fruitful space. And we want to continue with more that is ailing women in this decade. And another aspect of it is the issue of financial inclusion, just to shift gears and to tell you a bit more about Kenya's financial inclusion gender gap. Did you know that according to research that was done in 2021 by Fine Access Household, it was a survey that showed that 8 out of every 10 Kenyans, that's about 83%, have access to formal financial services. However, the gap in financial access also between men and women has continually to improve, according to that survey, reducing from 8.5% in 2016 to 4.2% in 2021. But the critical one is about the gender exclusion gap that has increased from 1.6% to 1.6%, I beg your pardon, in 2021. That's from 0.5% in 2019. And this is where you come in, Mr. Githaiga, because you identified a need, and there's this very huge population of women that form part of the population that is disadvantaged and underserved when it comes to financial services. Talk to me about why this is happening. Why women specifically?
Thank you very much. First of all, what I would like to say is that I've been in this space for long enough, and there are many stereotypes. In fact, what was being said earlier, resonates very well. We started at family level. Even when we have children, I have grandchildren, 9 of them, and I know how things go. You start by buying your son an expensive high technology equipment, and the girl is bought a doll. So the stereotyping is starting right at the family level. and we assume that this is done at discrimination and women exclusion is done at mashinani. It's even done in where we are educated. And we go to the supermarket, what we bring our children back. So we already have started creating a narrative. And that narrative moves on. And, one of the best way to exclude and oppress women is what I usually call it the 3 Ps. And the 3 Ps, one of the P is poverty, poor. The next is pregnancy. The third one is power. So you are poor, you are pregnant, and you are powerless.
Pregnancy is supposed to be...
So, and when pregnancy is supposed to be a procreation issue,
yes,
it has been used in our setup to keep women down. Where you find even family planning services are not available. Women can make choices. And truly to it, women play a very important role in this country to keep a population going on. And when you look at even their health issues relating to childbearing, the whole terrain is horrible. But all of it, all the 3 Ps hedge on only one thing, poverty. And that's where financial inclusion is all about. So when you look at what we do is, in the early 80s, the women came together, led by Dr. Mary Okero, and they felt that women financial exclusion is the biggest challenge that women are going through in Kenya. In those days, a woman couldn't open a bank account without the introduction of the husband or the father. So that's how bad things were. I know these days we feel we've done it, but even having said we've done it, if you want to take a loan in a bank, you need collateral. You need a title deed. How many title deeds are in the hands of women? Less than 18%. So in the end of the day, the things that were there in the 80s are there even up today. And that's how Kenya Women Microfinance Bank was born, to be able to give women space. And the mission is to partner with women in creation of their wealth, and upholding the dignity of women is paramount. So, and I said, what we do is we focus on the triple bottom line approach. So we focus on social impact, we focus on prosperity, and then we also focus on environment, because environment is very key for women. You can see what is happening now. No water, women have to travel long distance, and apparently, don't ask me where men are when women are looking for water. Don't ask me where men are when women are looking for firewood to cook. So those are the fundamental issues. And as an institution, we came up and said, then why can't we come up with a solution that includes women, not just by serving them, by including them, because that's the way to do. So you look at our institution, what we have done, we have about 2,000 employees. 55% of them are women. But when you come to leadership, 48% are women. So there's work to be done to make women break the glass ceiling.
Right.
Our board is 2/3 women, led by women. So it's an issue of making, not only serving, but including. When we come to shareholding, out of the company, 65% of the company is owned by women. So it's not a story of just doing workshops, seminars, and talking about it. It is by taking practical actions where you give women leadership, you give them ownership, and you give them service. Let women be their own solution, because they know what to do.
All right. Yeah, you've said, include them. Don't just serve them. Make them part of the whole process. And Okiro, it is said that, decisions relating to financial services largely are made by men. And men also happen to hold most of these senior positions in these institutions, especially financial institutions. Could this level of involvement, create a room for an unconscious gender bias, from where you sit?
Okay, thank you. I will start by saying that, first of all, aside from my first saying that children become what they see, the second thing is only the wearer of the shoe knows how it pinches. Mm-hmm. I would not sit here and expect Dr. Githaiga to understand things that I, as a biological woman, have suffered, and things that I have seen, as much as he supports women in all his initiatives. There are things that are particularly and peculiar to only a person who's of that, I'd say, gender. So that as a woman, you're able to see things from a different perspective also. And also in terms of style of leadership, you'll find that women bring leadership that also emphasizes on empathy, emphasizes on soft skills. And also when you look at studies such that have really been made public, and also they have made a case for involvement of women in board leadership and top leadership, is that companies that have women equality, and that is diversity and inclusion, because diversity, inclusion, those are very many, there are two things. Because we always say, in fact, now we are going to diversity, inclusion, and even participation, because diversity is being invited to the dance, to the event even. Mm-hmm. Inclusion is come and dance. Participation is you even get a choice in choosing which song
you want to dance.
So that those three people are in the dance, but then what role are you playing? So that companies that have demonstrated that they have women in boards, you have seen even from the McKinsey studies year and year later, years over the years, as well as the UN, these companies have shown increased revenue. They have also shown lower turnover. They have also showed up better in terms of sustainability and issues like environmental social governance, so that a case for inclusivity does not need to be made as though there is no data. And only, I'm not saying men cannot support, but only a wearer of a shoe can understand. I represent women and youth from where I sit. There are things that I'll see from those two lenses that other people may not see if they do not belong to that I'd say group. That is why we say diversity and inclusion is intersectional, because a man can support women, but a woman can also support persons with disabilities, and a person with disabilities can also support another form of intersectionality. So that when it comes to diversity and inclusion, truly, women must be involved at the decision table, because everything, as you've had, when you talk about financial inclusion, these decisions can only be made if there is a proper representation. As to the second, I'll even use the second P, as to the issue of pregnancies, there's nothing wrong with pregnancies. What we don't remember is even in the negotiations for the Africa Continental Free Trade Area as to the role of gender and women in trade, unpaid reproductive work, you find it is women who actually deal with, who raise children in Africa, and I'm referring to Africa, in the formative years. They're the ones going to look for wood. In the papers today, you can see 40 billion is the number of hours spent by women going to look for water and firewood. So that is a lot of unpaid reproductive work that women do. That is also another aspect. Only a person who understands, also who has been there, is sometimes able to push for those things. The last thing is even the issue of power, the last P. Why do we need women there? Because it is women who will push for policies, for instance, to curb child pregnancy. You have seen that now Nairobi County is launching the first safe house, and I thank our Honorable Lester Passaris. Women representatives and their role is such, that is why we have, because some things you can only see them from a perspective of the wearer of the shoe. I'm not saying men are not allies. That's why in every cause we have allyship. They can be allies, but however, we have to take charge of this problem and carry these issues and personalize them. Thank you.
Let me talk to another wearer of the shoe. Scholastica. From where you sit, what social norms, you know, create the barriers for access to finance for women from your lenses?
Socio-cultural barriers. There are many. Actually, I would say socio-cultural barriers are kind of root cause of all the problems and of financial exclusion. Like he mentioned, it becomes very difficult, for example, for a woman to get a loan. Why? Simply because for you to access loan, you need collateral. How many women have got the assets, you know, as collateral? Because where I come from, I was born and brought up in Mount Kenya region. Where I come from, there is coffee and tea. The women are actually the laborers in the plantations. They pick tea and coffee. But who owns the bank accounts? It's the men. So if my mother, for example, went to a bank today, she cannot access a loan because she doesn't have, you know, the collateral and all that. Those are social norms that they tell us women cannot own assets, cannot own factors of production. My mother's got a piece of land, but her work is to till in that piece of land. She cannot sell that land. She does not have the power of making decisions on what to do on that piece of land. And I'm actually not saying it's my mother, but that's a representation of so many women that you do not have access and control of factors of production, including land, including resources, you know, all those other things. The other thing is the aspect of decision-making. Social and cultural norms tell us that women are supposed to be sitting somewhere and wait for men to make decisions for them, including decisions on sex and reproductive health. That it's a man who decides how many children you want to to get. Of course, we'll say empowered women have got the power of making that decision. But look at the rural areas, you know, the women who've not gone to school. It's the man who decides, you know what, next year we need a child. And in fact, he also continues to say that until I get this number of boys, because until I become a father of boys, I'm not a man in the community. So even to make decisions of the number of children that you want to get remains an issue. It's a social norm. The other one is in terms of participation. What are women supposed to do? Culture tells us, scholar, to be a good woman, you must remain silent. Don't talk when men are talking. Don't say this when men have, you know, you go to a meeting, keep quiet so that the men can talk. So even in terms of participation, even in terms of speaking out our specific needs, our issues, it becomes a problem because that's what culture tells us. And then in terms of even making a decision on matters that pertains to your body. Right. FGM, we are talking about FGM. Who propagates it? The other day, we were actually trying to say that we want to have a policy, a law was passed, and we saw women demonstrating. Why were they demonstrating? Because the men in their spaces have said that they cannot marry a woman who has not gone through circumcision. And what does culture tell us? Culture tells us that if you are not married, you are less a woman. So if it calls for the FGM, then you need to go there. When it comes to issues of economic empowerment, we've had people talk about issues like an empowered woman is an arrogant woman. What does culture tell us? That a woman is supposed to be submissive.
Yeah.
That is even religion. Be submissive.
You're not supposed to be too successful.
You know? So you get to a certain level and you stop because you don't want to go beyond.
Especially if you're not married yet, you'd be advised, don't invest a lot.
You won't get a man to marry you.
Okay. But on the FGM, though, there was a concern about also the role women play because the cutters are women.
That's very true.
Would you entirely blame it on the men?
No, I do not entirely blame it on the men. I'll blame it on financial exclusion. Yeah. Why are women doing that? They are doing it as an income generating activity. So for them to earn an income, they must do the cutting. So if we have to curb FGM, then we must be able to come up with an alternative source of income for those women. We don't just tell them stop, because how else will they feed their children?
Dr. Geraldine, let me add that. You have come face to face with some of these social norms as you are trying to break the glass ceiling. Tell me a bit more about how your experience has been as an African woman growing in an African society with the issues that we are all discussing this morning. How has that journey been for you, and what is it that you have done that you would say has worked for you?
First, I was smiling when Scholastica is explaining those societal barriers, and I think the biggest of them all is actually the marital aspect and the childbearing aspect. You are expected at some point, you have to stop that journey, and you have to take a detour. If you are aiming to have a PhD like myself, this is actually the word on the ground, that men don't want women of that nature. And I understand where they're coming from, because for a man, if my colleague here has that PhD, he can marry downwards or upwards. He can go to the least, but I don't have that option. I have to go up and up. I can't imagine going home and telling my mom, no offense to whatever profession that person is having.
Be careful where you're going.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I know, and even your own parents, they won't understand. The society won't understand. So, but then you have to ask yourself, at what expense am I taking this detour? And I remember when I was in high school or shortly after, I happened to watch the Wings to Fly, and Caroline Mutuku was a guest, and she said that about careers, there is no single day that your career will wake up one day and say that I don't love you anymore. This gentleman can wake up and decide I'm not enough today. Oh,
But not this
one. Yes, not this one. But and again, the issue of financial freedom. I can make those contributions that society expects me to if I'm more financially independent or financially provided for. But then that aside, how has my journey been? I've grown up in spaces, especially my family, where you are told you are as good as your male counterpart. Whatever that job you want to go for, you can do it. There is nothing really special about biology or anatomy that makes you not settle for that. So I've had the support of my family to go there. And again, as you grow up, the way my co-panelists say that the trailblazers, the people who are ahead of you, you become that person, like the way she saw Sally and said, I want to be that person. I remember hearing the word professor. and I didn't even know what a professor does. You know, Professor Wagari, the late Wagari Maathai, and I was like, I think I like that. You know, I want to get there. Until now, I'm in undergraduate, master's, PhD, and I realize the journey to professorship is not a walk in the park. But then along the journey, I've had people who have held my hand. It would only be better if you find these people earlier in your career. But coming from a family where you are the first one to go to the university, you're the first one to get to where I am, it gets hard. But then for the generations that are after me, it gets easier because I get to go back to the schools that I studied, and those young boys and girls, as well as the ones in my family, they have someone they can talk to about their careers. They have someone they can, you know, reach out if they need a decision to be made. And also, maybe to add that it's a big responsibility for those of us who have made it. You cannot
sustain it.
Yes, and you cannot afford to fail. Failing is not an option, because if you fail, you are telling the people behind you, the young women and girls behind you, that, well, the journey is good, but it is bumpy. So you have to make it that they want to get there. And you also have to be honest. It's not easy. It's not easy. You have to deal with, you know, all those stereotypes and get past them.
Okay. So, Mr. Githaiga, you know, looking at the realities that we have, you know, had from these great ladies, how have you designed financial solutions that address the unique needs of this very special population, you know, that compared to men, they say are less educated, are earning more, are earning less, let me correct myself, and they also own fewer assets. There is so little in their hands and in their name. What are you doing to sort of come up with financial solutions that meet their need, their specific needs?
Okay, thank you very much, and I really do appreciate this discussion, and you know, this discussion needs to be taken to the grassroots. That's where the issues are. That's where we came from. That's where the issues of gender-based violence is more stronger down there, and it's all an economic issue. It's all a woman who is economically disempowered must live in an abusive relationship because she can walk out. She doesn't know where to take her children. So these are choices women make. Women make choices for their families, and if they don't have ability to do something for themselves, they will live and survive in those kind of situations, even if they have to get killed, injured in those relations. So we really now have to go to the core of the issue and say, where does all this come from? You talked about, before I go to what you have asked, about female gentlemen, FGM. FGM is not just an economic issue, it's a survival issue. What voice would the women have if they are not contributing, if they don't own the means of generating income, if they are excluded? They really have no choices, and the buyers of the service are men. So whoever pays the piper calls the tune. So I think this thing is larger than general discussion. It's really deep, and practical solutions need to be found. And I appreciate my colleague, but we need men in it. We need men in this discussion, because you need people to understand how to do it. It's at the family level, it's at the societal level. Unless our men are included, and then men participate meaningfully and seriously and get committed to it, then women are going to remain completely excluded. So as an institution, what we've done is we do not exclude men, because that would be a mistake. We say we finance and create products that address families. But we argue, then for those services to be made available, we need the woman at the center of it, either by owning the business or by managing the business and participating. We don't want a situation where the women are told they are not there, or they are at home, they're in the kitchen. No, we want the woman in the middle of it. So it's not an issue of isolating women. It's an issue of bringing women into the middle of it, so that you are looking at the family, you are looking at family business, we are looking at family activities, we are looking at how the family is going to benefit from the money that we are providing. But the woman must be in the middle of it. She must be excluded. Once you include the mother, you've already automatically taken care of the daughter. Automatically. And women are very passionate about their children. You know, if you give a woman money, bulk of that money is spent at the family level. Now, so you are sure that when you empower a woman, you have empowered the family. And in the process, then you get men who are growing up in that family who understand women issues.
And the power of
a woman. And that's what drives me.
Yeah. Allow me to just ask you something. Is it true that women are better credit customers compared to men?
Yeah, for sure. That I can tell you 100%. and I'll tell you the reason. Women, you can give a woman little money, she knows how to nurture it. You know, if you give a man 10,000, he asks you, what do I do with 10,000 shillings? What do I do with it? I want to start a business at 10,000 and she will not. And I think it's because of the way the women are formulated. They are good in nurturing, they are patient, they can be able to nurture a business just like they are able to nurture a baby until the business reaches to a certain point. So, but I said this a little bit earlier. The debate and the discussions have to be upgraded. We do not only talk about serving women. Women are not recipients of services. Mm-hmm. They should not be. And that's where the problem is. Don't put the women at the tail end of the discussion and you develop products that exclude them. Give them leadership, give them ownership, let them meaningfully sit at the board level. Let's not talk about 2/3, 1/3 gender rule. 1/3 gender rule is a tokenism. Mm-hmm. 52% of this society are women. Let's talk about parliament. 52% of the members of parliament are women. Okay. In boards, let's talk about majority of the board members are women, not 1/3. That's where the game is lost. Mm.
Okay, yeah. I'll come back to you, but I just want also to look at something else. And Marcio, there is this trend that evidence is showing that women are preferring, because of the barriers we have discussed, women prefer now informal financial services. Mm-hmm. That is where they feel is easier, and they are tapping that opportunity very well, because informal financial services, are centered around social networks and social assets, which really women thrive in. But it comes with risks. Mm-hmm. When things are not structured, when things are not organized. Let's talk about the risks women are exposed to as a result of tapping the opportunities in the informal financial services area vis-a-vis the formal sector.
Okay, well, at the heart of that, I would say that, first of all, anything informal and anything not well structured also has a higher risk of illegalities. And you see, illegalities mean you also are not, if I start bribing Madam Scholastica over here, then something happens to me. I have to explain what I was doing before something happened to me. If you expose women to informal setups where they have to access credit, they're also endangering their lives. Let's also not forget that when it comes to gender-based violence, which I really must reiterate because it's a scourge and it's really at the center of a lot of things, gender-based violence, a good number of the perpetrators are usually known to the victim. Most of the gender-based violence that happens to women does not happen, and by victim, known to the perpetrator means it's that person you went to get informal credit services from, for example, and sometimes close family members, etc. One of the risks is increased GBV. The other thing is loss of even, as I would say, the little assets you have, and also getting into instances where you get exposed to illegalities around what you give as collateral. And what you give as collateral, it's unfortunate to say this, is that sometimes collateral is also in the form of sexual favors and other things. And you see informal sectors also, the lack of regulation also opens Pandora's box to many other evils. So that is not a good example, and it's not a good thing. However, what I will say is this: everything does not have to be structured in the form of banks, as we have had in that example. Mm-hmm. You do realize that cooperative societies and chamas, as they are in merry-go-rounds, have actually been at the bulk of this economy. And even the government in its manifesto, the current government, did recognize the role of MSMEs. So that I don't have to be the one to have collateral. The three of us here, we can look for something and putting a little money aside and we get collateral. So that when you think about formalization, outside of formalization around going to banks, we can actually tap into, I'll call them semi-formal, so that those risks of even losing property, because sometimes women have been conned into even giving out their land title deeds, giving out inheritance, giving up even collateral on security that is not really equal to what facility they are seeking. Let us empower women and access to credit. Access to credit is the launch of the women, the WEF, during the WEF forum last week by the CS for Gender. The first thing is around the launch of the Women Enterprise Fund. Yes, that's what I mean. We also have county governments that are really housing women in chamas. Not really that now they've opened a bank here, because now that becomes a whole other regulation issue. Bringing women together and saying, in this village, the 10 of you can actually come together and we will guide you, we will train you, because training is also important. And I think KWFT has done that. I remember even growing up, my mom used to attend those trainings, just so that you know circles, what, because not all of us has to go to banks, but then are we giving these people this information? You know, people look at banks, they think that one is for clean people, people who went to school. I can't now enter there. As to GBV, I must just comment and say on the issue of FGM. Aside from it being motivation from women who actually participate in it, let us not forget that when you discuss about patriarchy being the main really root of women oppression, women suppression, and also these norms having been there to protect the patriarchy, the purveyor belts for patriarchy are women. So that just because someone is a woman does not mean they cannot be handholders and house that patriarchy. So women are also part of that, pushing the norms of patriarchy that oppress.
They're not coming to this negotiating table with clean hands.
Sometimes not really. Sometimes not really.
Okay,
yes.
So how do we tame these risks to make, she has talked about some level of usefulness in the informal financial services, in the informal financial sector. How do we tame the risks, to make it more efficient for women who find that as the only opportunity they can access services?
To pick up from where she's left, I'll add another barrier to access of formal financial institution. And one of them is lack of information, that the women in the rural areas may not have the information regarding the, the formal financial institutions and especially what is expected of them. There are some documents they are supposed to fill in before they get those loans. Most of the women actually may not have the ability or the capability to read and write. Let's not forget that. So telling them to go and fill in those forms is actually pushing them away from the formal institutions. The other one is basically the aspect of fear. MSc conducted a study and identified fear as one of the issues that push women from accessing financial services from the formal institutions, that they do not know what to expect. That when they get there, they expect that they'll depend on someone to fill in these forms, to explain to them, and sometimes even the language used is not understandable to them. You'll tell me you need collateral. What is collateral? How do I understand what collateral is? You go for services or products like insurance. You tell me this is what it entails, but there are hidden disclaimers there that me and my other women cannot understand. So you depend so much on people. So how do we make it much better? And especially for the informal, what do we call them? Informal places where they can get money. Let's legalize it. Let's educate. Let's formalize it. Let us get it registered so that women can get money from their chamas, they can repay, and then the interest rate is also regulated so that women do not take advantage of other women as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Scholastica. So we asked you also to be part of this broadcast and to share with us your thoughts and your views at Citizen TV Kenya. And we just want to sample some of what you've been saying online. Joining us now is Ayub Abdikadir. I wonder where he was when we were talking about Matters Women, but so we just want to hear your thoughts and some of the questions you're posing to my panel this particular morning, and of course, just mainly sharing more about what you celebrate about the steps women have achieved in society. And let me now allow Ayub Abdikadir to take you through that. Ayub, where were you?
Disclaimer on that, it indeed is International Women's Day, and we did call unto you to send in your contributions on the hashtag Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya, at Ayub Abdikadir, and at Safin_Cheng. Here is a sampling of your feedback on the hashtag, and coming up shortly on your screens, this is what you said using that hashtag. Evantas Mutiga says, Happy International Women's Day to my wife, Libea, and my mom, Doris. They have been a pillar in my life. Their support and providence has been great. Bob Otieno Owino says, I celebrate my mother, Mrs. Perez Achieng Owino. She took good care of us when we lost our late dad, Mr. J.J. Owino, in 1993. Elmoge 007 says, women are the primary caregivers of children and elders in every country of the world. International studies demonstrates that when the economy and political organization of a society changes, women take the lead into new realities. Reverend Harry_Kosgei says, women are the light of the society. That's what men can do, women can do better. Kudos, new administration on gender issue. Please continue giving women more recognition. Hongera and happy International Women's Day to all. God bless. Bob Otieno Owino again says, challenges facing women are especially contributed by our culture, and it is high time our African cultures should be relooked at to unlock them free. Godi Barasawere says both national and county legislative houses should be deliberate on coming up with policies that will see women empowerment and gender equality strictly fostered from the grassroots. Those are some of the feedback on the Twitter hashtag Daybreak, at Citizen TV Kenya, at Ayub Abdikadir, and at Safin_Achieng. And that has been an insightful discussion on a day women across the world are celebrated. The theme of this year's International Women's Day 2023 is digital innovation and the technology for gender parity or gender equality in the country, and the efforts made by the government in bridging the inequalities in the country as enshrined, of course, in the Constitution. A memo by the President to the bicameral House and the speakers of the Houses calling for a top-up in representation of women in the National Assembly and the Senate to at least meet the constitutional requirement for the House as it is at the moment. It stands dissolved and illegally constituted following the advisory given by the Chief Justice Emeritus David Kinani Maraga in 2020 to then President, advising him to dissolve Parliament. But there have been questions about the issue of, again, the Kenyan electorate coming up with a House that is constitutionally constituted in terms of its gender makeup. For this is a democracy. You might even lose the number that we have had so far. However, efforts have been made, and that has been the discussion here on the broadcast this morning. Thanks for watching. Over to my colleague, Safin_Achieng Ouma.
Indeed, thank you so much, Ayub. And that is how we just want to wrap it up with the final round of comments from my panel this morning as we give ourselves a scorecard as a country on how much we have achieved when it comes to gender equality. And let me start with you, Mercy Okiro. They say that Rwanda is actually the only country that has attained the 52% representation of women in parliament. In Kenya, where are we from your scorecard?
Well, in Kenya, we're definitely, thank you, Safin. In Kenya, we're definitely doing worse than Rwanda in terms of women representation. But then again, on the other end, you can see now we have 7 governors, and that is a huge jump from what we had in 2017. But more importantly, another thing we should also, let's not also focus on the negative so much. You must also, and today on this International Women's Day, it's also a turn for us to take stock and also appreciate where we are. We did conduct as KEPSA a study which we launched in 2021 on board diversity. And we found that the number in terms of percentages in Kenya as to board diversity is 36% in Kenyan boards, which is actually higher than the global average of 24%. So that as Kenya, we have more women in the boardrooms, and I'm also a board member. And I felt right in that smack of the middle of that study. So that in terms of board diversity, we are doing better. In terms, honestly, of even our freedoms of association and our freedoms even to speak up, Kenya is one of those countries that gives women an opportunity to be in spaces and speak as compared to other countries. I've seen countries where women don't even enter some offices. Women are not even given an opportunity to speak or say anything. And the fact that increasingly we are seeing more women even offering their candidature. They may not have won in the last election, but just that women now actually are looking at this country and seeing that they can actually be in positions where they can vie and go head-to-head with men. I think that's also a whole move. Right. Look at even the young women, like Kirinyaga women representative, going against a very young lawyer, going against established politicians and winning. And also normalizing cabinet. We've seen an increase of also, this is the first time we're seeing people, youth, under, I'll say even under 40 women, sitting as PSs. That is also something that I'll tell you, countries like Nigeria, I have not had. In fact,
we are headed in the right direction.
Yes, yes. We just keep we need gas on pedal. Let's not relent. Today we reflect, we celebrate. Tomorrow kazi inaendelea.
All right.
Yes.
So Scholastica, 22% is the combined wealth of the world's 22 richest men, which is more than the wealth of all the women in Africa combined. As part of your parting shot, how do we bridge that inequality?
Oh, that's a bit scary. Yes, those are facts. But I think, like I mentioned, we need to be very intentional, very deliberate in supporting strategies and measures that empower women financially, socially, economically, in all aspects. But then again, now that we are talking about technology and innovation, I think we also need to look at ways of bridging the digital gender divide. How do we improve on accessibility of devices? How do we look at the cost in terms of affordability? We all appreciate that women are disadvantaged. And of course, not all women, but most of the women are disadvantaged when it comes to, to financial muscle. Then you also need to look at issues of literacy, digital literacy for that matter. We need to look at areas of communicating the value of technology. Like our colleague has mentioned that they did not have role models. What is it that technology can be able to do for us? Let's create content that speaks to the needs of women. Let women participate in creating that content. And the other one, let's address the issues of social norms that keep away women from accessing space that can make them gain on the financial matters. And finally, the issues of safety and security when it comes to technology. How do we ensure that our women can participate in the digital space and feeling secure, that there is no cyberbullying, there is no sexual harassment, the online sexual harassment? How do we ensure that women are partakers in the space, in the digital space, and not just onlookers?
Observers.
Yeah.
All right, so Dr. Geraldine Lengai, what's your challenge to women like yourself, women who've actually beat the odds and occupied the spaces that were previously believed to be male-dominated spaces? What do you want those women to do to change the narrative going forward?
First, I would like us not to fail, like I said previously, because failing will be undoing the much work that some of us have actually done. And also, we have to be the pillars and beacon of light to the younger ones that are coming after us. And we also have to make sure that we also don't become more barriers to fellow young women who want to join the space of pursuing STEM. And more so, we need to be the mentors that we didn't have. From way back in the primary school, high school, all the way to the university, we need to be the ones that are reducing that gap. We may not totally close it in the current time, but we need to be the ones that are reducing the gap of the number of women that are joining STEM in all aspects of science and technology. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Dr. Githaiga, there's a woman who could be watching you from a very remote part of this country, and they're wondering, okay, so you've said all these things. What opportunities do I have? How do I begin in this small corner of the world? What do you tell that woman?
First of all, thank you. What I would tell that woman is that we need to take the services to the people. We need to move ourselves to where Kenyans are, and take the majority of our activity and our business down on the ground. And there is the issue we discussed about financial literacy. Financial literacy is very, very key. We need our women to understand how to access all these facilities we are talking about. How do you go about it so that they can be able to be included and to be able to participate? We discussed at one point about a collateral. And I wanted just to point out that we need alternative ways of looking at collateral. Women can be trusted. We, like in our organization, we rely on alternative collateral. We do not talk about hard collateral, where women get together and they guarantee each other. And based on that, what we call social collateral, you can be able to access credit. And all we need to do is to get together as women. Let's be the solution that we are looking for. Let's participate together. Let's pull together first before we even get other people involved. What I would also like to say, and I had pointed this area, we need women included in boards. And I'm not talking about 1/3. I'm talking about women inclusion at the board levels. Whether we are dealing with activities, committees in the village, whether we are talking about big corporates, let women be included in decision making. Let women be where decisions are being made. And at the same time, increasingly now, the UN has come up with the women empowerment principles, where we focus on workplace, marketplace, and community. Let's all be signatory to those 7 women empowerment principles, where the institutions make deliberate decisions that they want to make sure that women at workplace are taken care of and they are given opportunity. We are serving the communities well, and we are taking about care of women issues. So without doing that, I think as corporates, we are not doing the correct thing. We need to be good corporate citizens by doing what is correct. It takes time to do bad things. Why do we take effort to do the wrong thing? It takes effort. Let's do what is correct. What is correct is include women in the workplace, include them in the marketplace, and take care of the societal issues. We need also financial institutions to come up with solutions that can address women issues. Yeah.
What a way to end it. Thank you so much, Mwangi Githaiga, the Managing Director of Kenya Women Microfinance Bank, formerly known as the Kenya Women Finance Trust. This morning, we were also having the sit down with Dr. Geraldine Lengai, the winner of the 2022 L'Oreal UNESCO for Women in Science Sub-Saharan Africa Young Talent Award. We had also Scholastica Career, a gender inclusion specialist, and Mercy Okiro, the Vice Chair of the Gender Board of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, and also at the National Construction Authority Board. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for creating time for us this morning. And that's how we end it here. From me, Safina Chiengoma, it's been a pleasure and absolutely fantastic to do this for you each and every Wednesday. We appreciate your time and your feedback on this show.
Thanks for watching, and quite very inquisitive and educative discussion regarding women, of course. And one of most talked about women leaders in the world is the former German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, who had steered the biggest economy in Europe. Yeah. And of course, admired because of her charisma, how she approached issues, and seen as the Copernican constant to address some of the European problems, a vacuum she left, and the war in Europe, which seems to be now getting the attention, but not as required to solve that diplomatically. And of course, the former House Speaker of the United States of America, Nancy Pelosi. By the way, there's a very good book she has documented, Pelosi Power, how she survived in the context of the American political establishment, and therefore the importance of women in leadership and how influential they are in terms of crucial decisions. Thanks for making time, much appreciated. We look forward to more engagements with you and of course others and stakeholders. And thanks to you for your feedback. The hashtag has been Daybreak, the SMS code 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya, at Ayub Abdikadir, and at Safin_Chieng. Again, happy International Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you.
Up next is Willis Raburu, still recuperating from what happened on Sunday. So each goal for a day, it's Sunday to Sunday. Willis will be here with his segment. And thanks for watching. We appreciate your time and company for watching Daybreak. We'll see you next week by the grace of God. Good morning.